realize how much white supremacy is evident in pornography. I was like, man. I said, Jasmine, school us for a minute. And she said, because now you have basically the idea or the image is that, look, I have to have this thing about 20 feet long to actually be pleasurable to my counterpart. Okay, so I'm going to set this out there. And I probably haven't said it out loud before, but I'm going to say it now. I am not a medical doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not even a doctor of philosophy. I'm not a PhD or anything like that. Now, granted, you guys can call me Dr. Bush if all you want to. I guess you're speaking in existence because maybe one day I will go back to it. But I don't know. I like the money that I'm making right now, so why would I? But again, nowhere on any publications I'll be fine on Bush Counseling Services, the Mind of Man podcast, am I a doctor. But I do try to play one in the bedroom. If I'm allowed to. But anyway, thank you for tuning in to the Mind of a Man podcast, where Bush Counseling Services believe that honesty is the best policy when necessary. Then it can be brutal. So without further ado, let the conversation begin. Bartender, cue the music.
Welcome to the Mind of a Man podcast. A podcast where men have manversations on topics they rarely discuss, such as health, family, and wealth, to name a few. Now, here's your host, James Bush.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning into the Mind of a Man podcast. I don't know, I keep saying that or anything like that, and it hits harder every time I do say it. But anyway, my name is James Bush. I am your man-versationist. And today, we got a cool East Coast fella, man, visiting us today. He has an official name. He is a licensed clinical social worker, and he has letters, and he has all these different designations behind him, and I don't want to take away from any of that. But it's my guy, Martin. Martin, welcome to the show, bro.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here.
Like, subscribe, share this on YouTube or anything like that. Yeah, that jazz. I'm on all the popular podcasting platforms, that kind of thing. Okay, let's get into it now. Let's go, Martin.
Yeah. So it's Marvin, like Marvin the Martian.
Oh, Marvin the Martian.
Yeah.
Man, I've been spelling your name wrong in all the show notes. Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. Change that shit.
Hey, man, it was a time when we used to rock Marvin the Martian, lot 79 kind of way. But anyway, go ahead.
That's my favorite Looney Tunes character. So you introduction?
Man, tell me about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Marvin Toliver. I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in Philadelphia. Always sending love, strength, and solidarity to the Lenni Lenape tribe whose stolen land that we're currently on. I'm a therapist at the Radical Therapy Center, so it's a group practice. We prioritize folks with marginalized identities or people of color, queer folks, immigrants. We say that we created that space for folks like us. Also co-founder of Melanated Social Work. So we are 4 male social workers of color, trying to end the stigma around mental health in Black and brown communities. We're trying to change the face of what therapy looks like, because I think, as we all know, is white woman dominated, and also fighting for Black liberation and fighting to dismantle systems that are rooted in white supremacy. So I'm a consultant, I'm a guest lecturer, I am a therapist, obviously. I like to say I'm a radical educator. I do a lot of things.
Wear a lot of hats, I see. That's what's up.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
So, Marvin the Martian, I got that now. I like to be a little bit unconventional. Start off with a game. Anything, a little icebreaker. Yeah. I'll bust up my guests before when we really get into it. Cool? So, game time. Generally, for a while, none of my guests or so, except Jasmine, she got all of them right. But none of them have gotten all 5 right. If you do, then you get Mind of a Man podcast swag. If not, I dump on you for about maybe a good 45 minutes. We talking. Cool? So, you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 1, that is. Who did Luke write the book of Acts to?
In the Bible?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can pass that.
No swag for you.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 2. This is gonna go faster than I thought. What is the chemical symbol for carbon?
Carbon is C.
Question number 3. Who recorded the song Black Magic Woman? Come on, Marvin. You got this one.
Black Magic Woman is... Oh, shit. Is it Mark? Is it? It's not Marvin Gaye.
Huh? Thanks out for the border.
I'll leave it. That's not Marvin Gaye. That's Locks. Huh? No, not Bob Marley. You got to cut this out. You can't have me. You can't have my black card revoked from the people.
No. This ain't a black card thing right there. Just think south of the border. You know, I mean, you know, man, shoot, you didn't miss one already. First name Carlos.
Really, Carlos Santana?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about a whole nother song, then. I guess.
Got you. That's cool, my man. That's cool.
Damn. Okay.
All right. He said you gotta cut this out. You gonna have my black card revoked. All right. So, question number 4. Where were fortune cookies invented? Oh, I never got this one.
Where were they invented?
Yes.
China?
Amazingly, United States. I'll do some more research on that one.
Really? Okay.
Question number 5. I think you will get this one, I hope. Who is known as Slim Shady?
I'll be Eminem or Marshall Mathers.
There you go.
Yeah. I got two.
You got two. You got two, bro. You got two. Look. No cards are being revoked at this point right now. Look, folks, I butchered his name, man, in the show notes. So, man, look, he's allowed one pass on that one. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into the gauntlet. Now, as you are, as I am, we are black male therapists, and then a lot of times we are the low-hanging fruit for people in our culture. A lot of them like to bring their kids or they like to bring their husbands to have conversations with us. Why? Because they feel that there's a level of relatability.
Yeah.
But sometimes I get to that place where it just says, you know, all African-American male therapists are not created equal. There's a difference in all of us. So, and what I want to ask you, Marvin, is what makes you as an African-American male therapist different? I done seen, now granted, I done seen it on your Instagram, and I like some of the stuff you be saying, dude, because it be some of the things I be thinking. But what makes you different?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a couple of things make me different. So one, I'm based in relational therapy, and which basically, you know, quick and dirty of it is that the relationship between the client and the therapist is the most important. So I do a very good job of building rapport. I think I also do a very good job of having real conversations with my clients. I think a lot of therapists, they don't push, they don't challenge their clients in ways that I do. Never in ways that's going to be disrespectful or harmful, but just really, you know, sometimes I call my clients out on their shit. And I think it's necessary. I think, you know, I have different things style wise that are a bit different and a bit radical when you think about kind of your quote unquote traditional or typical therapist. Also, I identify as queer, as bisexual. And so I think that is incredibly helpful because I can work with any men. You know, I work primarily with men of color. I also have a few trans and non-binary clients as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think me having that lens gives me a unique perspective, right? So I can work with heterosexual men because I've been in relationships with women. I
Mm-hmm.
can work with queer men because like I know what it's like to the term before was come out, but now we're saying like allow people in. So when they're sharing themselves about their identity,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, I have such a wide range of just experiences just in life and in various areas of the country and in the world as well. Um, and I also still have the knowledge from, you know, graduate school and graduate training, but I'm able to very I'll say creatively intertwine that with like real things that Black and brown and marginalized folks go through to
Yeah.
make it relatable, to make it understandable, and to really help them heal.
One of my good buddies, Kelvin, he's the low coach of Atlanta. He calls me the translator, you know, because it's the ability to take what we learned in grad school and all that information and translate it into our community and our
Yeah,
culture, and being able to be, again, as you said, relatable. You know,
yeah,
a lot of times, they don't care about, man, the brain science or the
no,
axons or the cell bodies or the development and PJs. They don't care about none of that. You know,
nah,
how the hell does this make sense to me right now? What is it going to do for me? How can I stop, man, wanting to get high? How can I stop wanting to cheat on my partner? How
yeah,
can I mean, those are some of the questions that come into it's like, where the hell am I going after this damn divorce? It's like
mm-hmm.
those are some of the things that I think people are more interested in as opposed to just the psychobabble and the rhetoric and everything like that. Now, don't get me wrong. There was some interesting bathroom material, you can call it, man, that Freud and them came up with. This is, I'm like, how did you get that, though? I mean, but then again, we know that they were indulged in uh, heavy substances at times too.
Heavy cocaine use, heavy cocaine use for Ford. Yeah,
And so, I mean, no shade, but just be the facts. So let's call it what it is.
yeah,
But the ability to take that information and help our communities, I think, is so impactful. And you have to be well rounded.
yeah,
Also, too, I want to go and I want to put out there is the ability to not be judgmental,
yeah,
uh, unconditional positive regard, and
yeah,
empathic. You know, those things help go along. You know, you get a lot more bees with honey than vinegar. You know, but
mm-hmm.
sometimes, man, you might throw a little splash of vinegar on there because, hey, look, man, you messing up, dude. You know
Yeah,
that right there. And I like what you said in there. And again, when I read some of your Instagram posts or so, I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He don't cut no corners. It just. Do you think that's something that you came out of school with, or that you developed into that as you went along? I mean, was there a defining moment?
definitely didn't learn that in grad school. Grad
Gotcha.
school definitely tells us zero self-disclosure.
Wow.
You
Oh no,
you
no,
you.
Marvin.
Mhm.
But if you look on some of those standardized tests for us to get licensed or so, what is one of the biggest things they say about African Americans? They like that relatability. They want to hear some things about you
Yeah,
as opposed to, just the other stuff. So I kind of find that somewhat contradictory.
yeah,
From the test makers and everything like that, but it is what it is, though.
yeah. Um, I forgot the question. I'm sorry.
Now we was talking about basically, basically how you got your flow. How did you come
Right,
out
right, right.
and it was able to accomplish this because it's so needed?
Yeah, and so I mean, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from the folks that I've worked alongside, and I really have had, you know, a lot of experiences working with people even before I became a therapist.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I worked with kids at a summer program. As I've worked as a substitute teacher.
Mhm.
I served with an AmeriCorps program called City Year, where I was working with kids and I was working with teenagers.
Okay.
And so, you know, all of these in, low income communities of color, and a lot of the trauma looks the same.
Mhm.
And a lot of the presentation of a lot of kids, young adults look the same too.
Right.
And what I found was just that these folks just want to be seen. They just want to
Mm.
be heard. They just want to
Right.
be listened to. And like you, to your point, they don't want to be judged. And so when you come into this space, which is therapy, which people think is like a very formal, you have to dress a certain way, you have to, use correct English, you can't curse. It's just like, oh, no. This is the space where you can just be your authentic self. Say whatever you want to say. It might be a little bit racist, but we'll talk about that. It might be a little bit homophobic. We'll also talk about that too, because we got some unpacking to do, because, I'm not just going to let things like that slide. But,
right.
You really want folks to be their authentic self. And people are not going to be their authentic selves with us if they can't trust us. They're not going to trust us if they don't know anything about us. That's why walls are put up. As Black and brown folks, like, we don't tell our business. We are a lot of us are taught to not tell our business to anybody. And so how do you then, as a therapist, come in with that mindset, with a 17-year-old that has this mindset that I can't talk to anyone about anything? You got to build rapport. You got to build trust.
Yes.
You got to let them know, hey, whatever we talk about is not going back to your parents. It's not going back to your caregiver. It's not going back to your teacher, your principal. This stays, within these four walls.
Right. I'm not going to put it out in the street. Right now, the purpose of this is to help you get better, to take this journey with you. And I think that's so important, because when you look at the statistics and you see that the popularity numbers on single parent households, with a lack of a father figure or so. And sometimes, Martin, and you made it, matter of fact, you made it in one of your posts at one time. You said, male therapists, we put on a couple of different hats, when we're doing this. We're the therapist, or sometimes we're the pseudo father figure in this moment as well too. And so that has to be introduced to them. If they've never seen it and they've gotten to that point of 15, 16, 17 years old, it can be somewhat stifling to have a guy like you come in and say, man, what the fuck are you doing? It's just, man, but it's necessary, because that unconditional positive regard, that congruence, that empathy, that man shows that, hey, look, I'm here to take this journey with you. It's like, get your stuff and let's roll. And that's the thing. It's like, don't worry about, man, just picking and choosing and putting in your bag what looks nice, and come as you are, man. And let's work on this, because that's going to be a lot more beneficial in the end. So that leads me to my second segment of the day. And I thought about this and say, this guy, he works with probably a lot of young adolescent males, but he's probably around my age. So don't tell your age, Marvin. Don't tell your age.
I wasn't going to.
But when I grew up, I looked at it from the lens, I guess, of adolescence, a guy that's growing up in the DMV, that's DC, Maryland, and Virginia, for those who don't know, in probably like the 80s and the early 90s, and things were different. There wasn't a lot of discussion of social emotional learning. We weren't discussing ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. We weren't being taught to have these conversations with trusted parties or anything like that. Therapy for who? No, you go to the pastor. You go and you talk to other individuals about your issues, not knowing that the pastor's got a little bit more problems. More problems than a little bit. He does. He's a human. And so we had these spaces, but now it's different. It seems like there's a whole lot more inclusivity to the psychological world, the mental health world. And so what I'm asking you, Marvin, is what makes male development for African Americans different in the 21st century than it was before for us?
Yeah, I think it's more of kind of these societal changes, these cultural shifts, that like more Black people are openly talking about therapy and openly talking about mental health. I don't think when I was growing up, I had any athletes that were talking about depression, right, or talking about anxiety. Right. I don't think there were many people when I pictured a therapist, it wasn't anybody that looked like either of us. Right. It was a white man or a white woman on the couch, and therapy, was thought to be for white people. Right. When it comes to just inclusivity and acceptance, right? Like there was nobody like a Lil Nas X out there. Right? Prince was maybe the closest, androgynous, figure, right? So now we're openly talking about sexuality, and identity, and young people right now, like they have so much knowledge, they're so accepting, and it's wild, right? Like compared to when I was growing up, when like it was a don't ask don't tell policy. Black men go to therapy and open up. Black boys, right, and teens and adolescents are now looking at those Black men and saying, oh, I have permission to be emotional, I have permission to live however I want to live. I have permission to go to therapy and to accept help and to accept healing. And so I think that a lot more young people, young Black people, are have a more positive or a more favorable view of therapy and of mental health, and are more open to sharing, like when they're not feeling okay or when they're struggling with something. They have a wider range of emotions, and I think a lot of us as Black boys were allowed to have, which was just kind of just anger and laughter, really.
And alcohol
sometimes.
Alcohol and drugs.
And alcohol and drugs. Because when you don't have a whole range of emotions, you hold everything else in, and then alcohol and drugs feels good to you. But that's a whole nother story. But I think that the young folks now are gonna be just fine. Are gonna be just fine.
It's amazing because some of the things you're discussing as an adult, you kind of reflect back and just saying, okay, so here's some of the things that I'm doing now as an adult. I learned this when I was an adolescent. I learned this in development. I learned this by watching my mother, my father, my uncles, my aunts, and yada, yada, yada. That didn't work for them, and it's not working for me as well. It's one of the things that when we're talking about conflict, conflict in and of itself is not bad, but it's how you handle conflict. And one thing that I believe that not just African Americans, but many in our society, we don't know how to handle conflict. We don't know how to listen. We have conversations and we're at such a guarded position that we're listening to respond to someone as opposed to being informed and having a dialogue and a conversation about it. And we already know, I mean, Marvin and Martian, we about to nerd out on this. When you get into those fight or flight mechanisms, the brain has adrenaline pumping to it. And guess what? You're not processing anything while you're in that moment when that adrenaline is pumping. You are basically looking for war. So that was something that I don't think really a lot of us got early on. I hope for this generation, learn how to deal with conflict, learn how to disagree with one another and still be cool. Learn how to have those needed and necessary conversations as opposed to stifling all those different emotions and those feelings below. And then next thing you know, you're addicted to painkillers, or you're addicted to alcohol, or you having some other type of I won't say no. I mean, fetish. That's your own personal idea, but you're having some type of what do you want to say? Not cool behavior.
They're coping mechanisms.
Yeah, they're coping mechanisms. I'm trying to be PC right now. Their coping mechanisms are not favorable.
Some of them will lead to larger challenges, and some of them will not.
Some of them will lead to incarceration.
Larger challenges.
And so I think that's just so important right now for our society. I mean, and for our young people, it's like, you want to see the generation that is after us do better or so. And unfortunately, if they don't have the tools to be able to do such or so, I mean, it's what it is.
Definitely.
And
I think specifically around sex too, I think that's something that I think a lot of therapists are really hesitant to ask clients around too. And that's something I'm very intentional. If you're having sex, one, is it pleasurable? Two,
you mean sex is supposed to be pleasurable, Marvin? No,
believe it or not, for all parties involved. But like, are you communicating like your wants? Are you listening to your partner's wants and needs? Like, do you talk actually about sex? Because there's so many people who don't. They just have it, and then they just assume that it's a good job when no one actually talks about it. So that's something with both. I don't want to say kids. I'll say teens, because if they're old enough to have sex, and they're probably doing it as teens. Sometimes I'll say, I won't say all the time, but like you want to check in around that, right? Because teens are then listening to other teens about sex, and we know they don't always have the best knowledge. So like better come from us than them being influenced by other teens or porn or whatever else they watch.
Well, that's what I'm just saying, Marvin. They watch the porno. And they know everything that they need to know about it.
Yikes.
Within 10 to 15 minutes, it's going to be over. So it's like, but I mean, and you're right, because I think sometimes being as an adult and communicating your needs and your desires to the necessary parties. We're not talking about, man, Sister Susie on the corner. We're not talking about your boss. We're talking about your partner. Being able to have those type of conversations, I think sometimes for many, there's just a lot of trepidation. There's a lot of fear to just ask. They teach us in leadership class, ask for what you want, ask for what you need. And so, but they're so tricky because maybe in me asking what I want or desire, I'll possibly be rejected. And that happened a lot in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I was like, oh, you want what? Oh, and then boom, we off to the races with it. And now you shame. Now pretty much folks is cutting on you. And then it's like, it's what it is. And so you didn't feel safe to be able to have the discussions that you did. But now I feel like in this generation, we're having those type of talks. Okay, cool. This is who I am. This is what I like. Are you cool with that? If not, speak now or forever hold your peace. Because if you're not having those discussions, then it's going to lead to possible issues down the line.
It's hard to get there. It's hard to get there especially when we have so many societal pressures telling us how bad we are. Right? We have so many societal pressures telling us that we're not enough. Right. And I always name that a lot of these ideas are rooted in whiteness and in white supremacy, right? Around how, as darker skinned Black folks, some of us want to be lighter skinned. As larger bodied folks, a lot of us want to be skinny. Right. I
like me in my way.
as men, I think a lot of folks, want the 6-pack abs, want all of these things that we're seeing on Instagram and things like that, and not really telling us that we actually are beautiful the way that we are. But we have all of these messages entering our brains telling us that we're not.
It's funny because, man, you were joking about pornography, of all things, just a few minutes ago. And I had Jasmine Johnson. She's a therapist out in Florida. And she was, she broke something down for me. And she said that, you ever realize how much white supremacy is evident in pornography? I was like, what do you mean? I said, Jasmine, school us for a minute. And she said, because now you have basically the idea or the image is that, look, I have to have this thing about 20 feet long to actually be pleasurable to my counterpart. Or if I'm a female, I have to have the most robust assets as well as breasts or so to be appealing, as opposed to just, look, everybody's not that size and everybody doesn't have those features. And I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, it's crazy. But
I even want to take it a step back and not like one step back, but when you log on to these sites, who are the people who are featured for the most part? It's white people. You see white bodies all the time. And so there are specific categories that you have to click, right, to get to certain races. And so that is telling us, the normal, the typical, the regular is white.
Right.
If you want something other than white, which is the normal, you have to click here.
And I mean, again, that's our society, and it's the hidden message within. But hopefully, our young brothers and sisters, they are paying attention, they're listening, and they're getting some information so they can make better choices. We're going to take a small break. We'll be right back. Mind of a Man podcast.
The Mind of a Man podcast was brought to you by Bush Counselling Services, where we don't merely advise our clients, we accompany them on their journey to realise the life they desired. Look us up at bushcounselingservices.com. That's bushcounselingservices.com.
And we're back with Mind of a Man podcast. So Marvin, if you have, you're on social media, you see all the different memes, you see all the different infighting sometimes within our culture when it comes to relationships. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's just head scratching. I'm like, how do we all work together if we keep, bickering and fighting, fussing with each other? But that's another story for another day. So then October 5th, a article in Time magazine came out, and it said, men are now more likely to be single than women. It's not a good sign. And the article went on and it talked about African Americans of all. Black people are much more likely to be single, 59%, than any other race. And Black women, that would be 62%, are most likely to be single of any sector. Asian people, 29%, are the least likely to be single, followed by whites, 33%, and Hispanics, 38%. Marvin. What are we doing, bro?
Man, it's a couple of things here. So the first thing I'm wondering is why the title says it's not a good sign. That people are single, as if like being single is a terrible thing. People can be single, people can be partnered, people can be married. Me personally, I don't see anything as like a good sign, a bad sign. It's just a wave. This is a sign of the times, I think. I think that men are, to what we were speaking to earlier, are knowing themselves more and learning about themselves more. And maybe, I think they're really being intentional around who they want to be, in a relationship with. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think Black men, more, specifically, are also, realizing that they don't have to be in a monogamous relationship, or that they can be in a polyamorous relationship or a non-monogamous relationship. And that's also okay. Black women, I'm not sure of the reasons that are named in that article, but I know that Black women are also, in terms of dating, are the least desirable when it comes to dating. That's what the statistics say. That's not what I'm saying. I love me some Black women, but
I do too.
But Black women, and I believe Asian men, are the ones that like have the most trouble finding partners on like dating apps, on dating sites, and things like that too. I also think that when we look at the dynamic between Black men and Black women, right? And I'll start with earlier, Black girls are taught to take care of things, are taught to handle things, are taught to cook, are taught to plan things, are taught to care for. Black boys are often being taken care of. We're typically not given that much responsibility, other than like, I don't know, taking out the trash, like the more physical things in a traditional household, I'll say. And so when we grow up and become adults, women also are much more in tune with their emotions. Men typically are not. We don't have the same levels of emotional intelligence. And so women are having these expectations of like, hey, I want someone on my level. Black women also, I believe, I forget when that statistic was, but the most college educated as well.
Yeah. And
so, Black women want somebody on their level. They want a partner. They don't want to have someone that they have to take care of. Right. And so it's hard for a lot of Black women to find someone as their equal who has the same education, the same emotional intelligence, the same level of responsibility and acknowledgement, and is not, suffering from toxic masculinity. And it's slim pickings out there for a lot of them. And so I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm saying that there are significantly more Black women who are willing, ready, able, looking for a partner who is their match. Then I think there are men that they are looking for, if that makes sense. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Black men. Black men are also doing the damn thing. But I think when it comes to how we're socialized and how we're supposed to show up in relationships or in romantic partnerships, there's kind of a disconnect sometimes.
I would agree with that. So a couple of items that you looked at, you go to blackdemographics.com, and they actually had that conversation on African-American women being the highest educated demographic or so. But one of the things that they noticed is that it's not always linking to favorable paying income, favorable paying jobs. And so the thing is that you go to school and you get all this debt or so like that, and you come out and it's like, are you making six figures? Are you in that spot? No. But then compared to sometimes the brothers or so like that, they are in the plumbing, heating and cooling, HVAC, engineering positions or so like that. And that gets into the whole idea of the wealth gap and everything that comes along with that. So I definitely recognize you on that point. What is something that Asians and Caucasians are being instilled and taught that African Americans are not? And I'm wondering, what is the difference?
And I think that's part of the influence of white supremacy. I think when people think when we say white supremacy, it's only like prejudice or like discrimination that you can see. But I think one of the more significant pieces of white supremacy is that it affects our mindsets. Right? It makes us think that we are not good enough. I remember working for when I was in City Year and I was working with some kids, and we were like on a field trip, and there was this high rise. And at the time I had lived in a high rise with two other people. And I was just like, oh, I live right there. And this Black kid was like, no, you don't. And I was just like, what? Like, I'm telling you, I live right there. And he was just like, oh no, that's where like white people live.
Oh.
Yeah, somebody like with white with like a doctor and a good job live. And I'm just like, oh, so that was a teaching moment for that child. I had a nice conversation with him around what Black people and what he can achieve if he works hard. But I think that's white supremacy. Is that we are inferior because of where I live, because of what knowledge I have, because of the color of my skin. And that mindset, I think, is ingrained in a lot of us. A lot of us are living with internalized white supremacy, and we're just saying like, oh no, we just live in the hood, without really thinking about, okay, how is it that in many of the major cities, the hood is filled with Black and brown folks? That's not. Do you think that we're just less than? Do you think that we don't work as hard, that we're just not as smart? That's intentional.
Yeah,
right. That's white supremacy. And then the mindset of like, oh, I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna just do me, like forget everybody else. That's an individualistic mindset.
Yes.
Right. The crabs in the barrel mindset. Yes. Right. These are all rooted in white supremacy. But we point to the Black people. We point to the people of color and say, oh, what's wrong with you? We don't look at the system.
Yeah. Okay.
We look at the individuals and say, oh, well, what's wrong? You must not be working hard enough. And then they give us a model minority. They give us an Oprah. See, Oprah made it. Right. And so I think that when we talk about, when we look at the white population, we look at the Asian populations, it's a completely different experience, right? For people who immigrated to this country, because then they also have ethnic enclaves. They have they have neighborhoods in which a lot of the folks of their culture are there, and they are very much working together. They are very much making sure that everyone is eating, everyone has jobs, everyone is like well taken care of, right? When we look at white people, you're white, you have privilege. You've got an uncle that knows somebody, and so that's how you got that job.
Yeah.
For Black people, we have been trying to fight for freedom for 400 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at all of those demographics, we also have to think about the historical context that goes with those demographics as well.
Definitely. And on your point, a lot of what we're seeing today is a response or a reaction to a lot of what's happened before us, unfortunately. And we got it out the mud, figured it out the best way we could. Okay, cool. So this isn't working. We're going to do this. And we're going down this route. And we're going to be on this route for the next 30 or 40 years. Does it make sense? Makes sense for me. Is it societal socially helpful for our communities? Probably not, but it is what it is.
Like two things to that magazine article. One is that marriage is expensive as hell. Ain't nobody got no money to be getting married.
whoa.
In a whole pandemic.
Whoa. Speak on that, Marvin. What do you mean it's expensive as hell? What are you talking about?
You trying to have a wedding. You are dropping, I mean, if folks want to have 20, weddings
30 40
they're dropping tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars on these weddings. And we in a whole pandemic.
That's true.
Bank accounts are not set up that way any longer. And I think that's a huge piece as well, is that like marriage is expensive. Kids are expensive.
They are.
And so like sometimes people are just like, you know what, I'm not gonna do that. Not yet, not just yet. My other piece is just that I'm just curious around why that article was even written. For me, it's like that's not a priority for me in the Black community. Like, let's talk about reparations. Let's talk about police not killing us. Let's talk about Black women making as much as their white woman counterparts. Like, let's talk about the things that actually matter. Marriage, I mean, okay, or men being single and it's a problem. That's more of an opinion, but let's talk about how do we get closer to Black liberation? How do we get closer to Black people being equal and truly equal in all areas of society?
Make a good point. You definitely make a good point. So Marvin, I know I gotta go because man, you got a session. Tell the folks, tell the audience, where can they find you at? Where can they reach you at? He has some IG. Give it to us all, Marvin.
Yeah. So my Instagram is probably the best way. That's at M as in money _ Toliver, T as in tree, OLIV as in Victor, E as in egg, R. So sorry, M Toliver. Did I just say the wrong thing? You said M Toliver. M Toliver _ LCS. I just told y'all the whole wrong Instagram. So M Toliver, that same spelling was right, but M Toliver, all one word, _ LCSW. You can also visit the collective's website, melanatedsocialwork.com. You can also go to radicaltherapycenter.com. The same Instagram handles, same Instagram handles for both of those. So check. I always like to tell people, scroll through and read some of my posts first, because I am very radical and I want to make sure that you're following the right person.
Marvin came down with some great insight. We talked about, again, it's just what makes an African-American male a therapist. Ooh. A lot of people, they reach out because I'm solely Black and I'm a guy. And I'll take the low-hanging fruit. Yes, I will, or so. But that just doesn't always equate to the right therapist with a right fit. Dig a little deeper. Find out about that guy. What does he believe in? Generally, you can look on a lot of our Instagrams and our Zooms and our YouTube photos or videos, that is, and you can see you can get a sense of that person to some extent. And then you can choose. You can have consultation calls and you can find out if that's the right fit for you. Again, you are talking to a person that is going to take a mental health-wise journey with you. You want to make sure that you get the right person and the right fit. We also talked about male development in the 21st century. And there is a difference. We are more open to different schools of thoughts, mental health-wise. We've, I guess, discussed it and said that this might be something to this. So we have to begin to open up those doors to have these types of conversations, because these conversations, they impact what our children will do later on in life. A lot of the stuff we learn in development, and we learn from model behavior of adults. So yeah, but then we had to talk about the time article. And I wish I had more time with Marvin to go in detail with that. But it's very fascinating how at one point it sounded as if that women were, I guess, migrating away from the ideas of marriage or so. Sounds like guys are too, to some extent. And I believe a lot of that comes from, if it was a deeper dive into the article, they asked how many of you guys have been married previously. I mean, because the statistics, 45 to 50% of marriages end in divorce. The first ones, that is. Second marriages are 60 to 70%, and third marriages are 70 and over. And so there's a deeper dive. There's a deeper level of understanding. Oh yes, and also too, gray divorces are up. Those are divorces that are over the age of 50 years. Oh, call them silver splitters. You can look that up. It's on the AARP website. But yeah, it's like, this is what's happening. A lot of that is taking place based on some of the current fiscal responsibilities or irresponsibilities that are happening. But you're from a collectivistic society, tribal, warrior-like in nature, hunters, gatherers, family. We used to always say that it takes a village to raise a child. Man. So does it still? I think it does. So it's definitely something that we have to look at. We got to look into. But anyway, it's another conversation for another day. Once again, thank you to Marvin Martian. I didn't butcher his name. All right, what's the word for the day? We're going to say what? Philologist. Nah, I don't want to use that one. Let's say, what's the word? Black magic woman. There we go. It's by Carla Santana. It's a phrase, but I don't know. Whatever. Take care.